Okay, this time it legit says recordings.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Yes. And I haven't hit mine yet. So then we know it's good. All right. I'm recording as well. And I'm getting my GarageBand going. Okay. You all good?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. This is a Dateline special episode. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and I am joined by my intrepid researchers, cousin, sister, love of my life, Christy Oxborough. How are you?
You know, it's been a day.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, it's fine. I have kids, as you know.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I love them to pieces. They are,
Of course.
you know, just like smart and funny. And they're sometimes so fun to hang out with. But you know what else they are? Fucking loud.
I've heard that. I've heard that is a trait of children. Yes.
It's a lot. And they like to hang out at the dining room table where I'm working my case, and it just doesn't help. I'm only now realizing, why didn't I go get headphones? I just put up with their YouTubes and their whatever they were watching, but Jesus, it was a lot. So due to that, I've brought a friend with me tonight, and I hope you don't mind.
Oh my gosh.
Choo-choo!
She's back and she's better than ever. It's Brandy, ladies and gentlemen.
I wasn't going to leave Brandy behind. Not today.
Oh, gosh.
Brandy lifts me up when I need it. Yeah.
God love her.
Yeah.
God love her. Well, on that note, I'll have you know that I'm drinking a High Noon. Now, again, these people give us no money. This is my favorite one. It's the lime flavor. And this is if you want a margarita, but you feel like it might be too heavy. This is what you want. You know what I'm saying? Because I had a bit of a weekend. It was American Thanksgiving, and I went too hard. I just ate too much. I drank too much. It was too much. Too much. But the good news is that for the people watching this, you already noticed, but for the people listening, I am wearing my new Sparkle Reindeer plush scrunchie because tis the season. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I have gone crazy this year decorating my house. I've bought multiple like holiday themed rugs, like things that you don't think about. I think just because 2020 has been such a bear, I was like, I'm going as hard as I want to go.
Yeah, it's your God-given right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one might say you normally do go quite hard at Christmas.
I do, yeah.
But, I mean, this year, have at it. You know, just like do whatever you feel is necessary. I don't think I've ever bought a fun rug in any way.
Let me tell you something. I'm obsessed with these things. And listen, again, shout out to Ruggable. They give us no money, but I love them. And the good thing about them is that there's a pad with a overlay, and the overlay is it folds up small enough you can put it in the washing machine. And when you've got multiple animals like I do that are throwing up, you know, all of the above around the house, it's key. It's key. So yeah, no, it's a hap holly jolly time over here. And I love that I could have I don't know. First of all, I could have not drank doing this. Arguably, I could have said, "Oh, I'm taking the night off," or I could have faked it and I could have emptied a can and then put something else in. But that's not how I roll, you know?
No,
because it doesn't matter that the people wouldn't know. I would know.
Yeah,
you know, and I can't be deceitful like that.
I would take that secret to the grave. You know that.
I do.
But yeah, I get it.
I don't want to burden you with it.
You're not the type, your soul is too pure. You're not one for the lies. You know?
I can't.
Yeah, I get it.
They eat me alive. Like they literally do. Like people are like, "Oh, you can lie. You're an actor." And I'm like, "It's two different things. Acting and lying are two different things completely." Not to sound like a pretentious D-bag, but you know, playing a character and lying, it's two different things. And lying makes my stomach hurt. I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah, I get it.
Now before we move on for Christmas, I should also tease that today that you're listening to this, if you're listening to this a day it came out, is December 8th. which means there are still 4 more days to enter our 12 Days of Christmas giveaway, which is very exciting. If you're listening to this after the 12th of December, sorry. You missed your chances.
We'll have other ones sometime.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
We had so much fun doing our first giveaway. We decided to do another. And listen, go over to our Instagram account at True Crime and Cocktails, because there are a million different ways that you can enter our draw. We've got 12 days of ways that you can enter it. I'm already rhyming and I'm not even trying, you know? It just comes naturally to me. But yes, we're so excited about this. The giveaway items are so awesome. And I attribute that all to Christy. She's put together something that, if you are a fan of the show, which by now I hope that you are, or maybe you're finding us now, but the point is that if you've been listening since the beginning, you are going to definitely want to have a chance to win one of these prize packs, because they are awesome.
Yeah.
Are we doing 2 or are we doing 1?
We're doing 2, baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Because we don't believe in one winner, I guess.
It feels wrong. Well, there's 2 of us.
We are.
2 of us, 2 winners.
You're
but
right.
yeah, but we, the first one we did, obviously it was, if you leave us a review on Apple, send us a screen grab, you get an entry into the draw. Now you still can do that. If you haven't left us a review on Apple, you can still do that, screen grab it, send it to us. Either, of course, on our Instagram DM or email theories@truecrimeandcocktails.com. But that's not the only way to enter. So if you don't have access to Apple, etc., go to our page. There's a million different ways to enter, and you can enter a million times. Like, there isn't like you can only enter once. We've set it up so that you can enter multiple times, multiple chances, etc., etc. Very exciting.
Yeah. I hate to go and say it again, but Brandy's pushing it. I'm so jazzed about it. I mean, I'm also terrified at the organization of it, but I also live for the organization of it.
I know.
I mean, there's just so much I can't say in case it hasn't happened yet in those days, but there's a lot of fun stuff coming up. So
a lot of fun stuff. Keep your eye on the Instagram account. You're not going to want to miss it. Couple things. So today's episode is a special episode. It is different than where it's not an unsolved mystery from Unsolved Mysteries. It's an unsolved mystery from Dateline. This is something I spoke about it, I believe, at the end of our last episode. I watched this episode as one does, because when I'm not viewing for work, i.e. this podcast, when I'm viewing for pleasure, apparently I still watch true crime. So that's where we're at. Yeah. But I watched this episode. It's a pair of cousins who are trying to solve a mystery. That reminded me of us. Mm-hmm. It was something that has happened very recent. And I thought that might be something interesting, because a lot of the unsolved mysteries that we have tackled, and a lot of the unsolved mysteries are cases that have been unsolved for, decades often.
Right.
So I pitched it. So this episode is Hope Whispers. If you haven't watched it, that's okay. We're going to walk you through it every step of the way. Don't feel like you're going to miss any details. If you have watched it, buckle up, because we're going to get into it. But you told me that there's actually there's another connection to this story and us, not just the sleuthing cousins, but there's another connection. And I'm curious about what that is.
The husband and wife in this story,
yes,
when they met, their first date was at the Hard Rock Café.
Okay, I know exactly where this is going. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Cannot wait. Oh boy. Wow. What year was it that we first went to the Hard Rock? Do you know?
I mean, I'm going to go with probably early 2000s, maybe?
I want to say it was 2002, whenever 8 Mile came out, right? So we were very young, for context, we were very young. And
because
Christy
we watched 8 Mile.
We sure did. We watched it twice in the theater. I believe 2 nights in a row, maybe?
Yes. Yes, we did.
Yeah. There's no shame in that.
Nope.
But Christy came to visit me. I was living in Toronto in an apartment with a roommate, and we, what a time. So it was walking distance to a Hard Rock. and the Hard Rock in Toronto at the time, I don't think it even exists anymore, but at the time it was in a kind of like a busy-ish area. So we decided to go, because I don't think either of us had been to one at that point. It was like, hey, let's check this out, right? Let's check this out.
Yeah.
And I remember, we ordered the platter, which came on 3 tiers. It was a tower of appetizers. And you know, we went back subsequently, like over the years, but we were always chasing that dragon, because I don't feel like the platter was ever as good as it was that first time.
It shrunk every single time. And also, I swear that there were so many dipping sauces.
There were.
So many. But yet we go back and it was like, here's a packet of ranch. You know, like it was, they were nicer than that. But like it just felt like it was so just dumbed down.
Yeah. It was watered down.
Yeah.
So we're at the Hard Rock. We're eating a nice meal, which is a tower of appetizers, and somebody approached us at the table. Was it, or were we going to leave? Or did we go upstairs? What happened?
The waitress, who could only be described as very Rosie Perez-esque.
Yes.
Because she even had like the curls and like the tight little pony at the top. And she came up to us and was just like, so ladies, what's your evening looking like? And we're just like, I don't know. We're just 2 gals out on the town doing, you know, what gals do. Yeah. And she was just like, you guys want to go to a free concert? And we were like, yes, please. And she gave us tickets to a concert that was upstairs from the Hard Rock.
And I think there was a little bit of time. I remember us going to my apartment and coming back, but that might not have happened. I just know that we for sure had leftovers. So it should be known that if it wasn't, I kind of want to believe this is true, that we went up to this club, to this concert, and that we brought our doggy bag, because there was no way we were leaving good food. You know, we wouldn't do that even to this day. So either it lived with our coats upstairs while we watched this show, or we had taken it home and come back. I don't remember exactly. But what was the name? What was her name? I'm totally blanking.
The waitress or the band?
The band.
Okay, because the waitress, I don't know if I even knew in the moment. So I was very impressed if you thought I knew. The band was Lennon.
Thank you. Of course. Yeah. Yes, Lennon. Now I remember she got some heat around that time. It was kind of like a female fronted band, and she very kind of goth-ish.
Yes.
Right? And it was not a super packed concert. No. But listen, the opening band, I always got the name wrong. Is it Government or Generation? It's Generation.
Generation.
That was the name of the opening band. Yep. But I kept calling it Government after it's a long G word. I don't know. We were drunk. But yeah, so I remember us watching the show and we got into it. Like, it was like, listen, we love concerts and discovering new music and stuff like that. So we
love free.
We do. That's also our favorite, of course, our favorite price tag.
Yeah.
But at some point after, so we stayed through the whole show. We watched, I think, 2 opening acts. We watched Lennon's show, and then we stuck around because again, we were having a time. And that's when we met. Was he the bassist or the guitar player? I want to say bassist for Lennon.
I don't know.
I think it was bassist.
It could be. I mean, I feel like I should have known this was coming, so I should have known to look him up. I'll look him up after.
Of course.
Assuming he's still alive. I don't know if he is.
It's hard to say. So keep in mind, like, the lead singer, this gal, who we talked to as well, who was very nice.
Yes.
She was very young, you know, and I think it was kind of in the era of Avril Lavigne and stuff like that. Like, they were looking for kind of like young, rocky singers, more rock than pop, to like kind of counteract the huge Britney Spears, Christina, because that was so huge at that time that I think there was like a real push for this. Anyway, long story short, so she was a very young, you know, bright-eyed, lovely gal, and then this bass player introduced himself to us as Stone. His name was, I will repeat, Stone, and he was, I gotta say, late 30s. At least, like, he was one of those dudes that's like a career musician who I'm sure, you know, was in a lot of different touring bands and stuff like that over the years. Probably never no offense, Stone, if you're listening, I hope you succeeded. I hope you're playing for someone big. Who knows? But what's amazing is I believe this was the same trip that we have referenced on other podcast episodes where I sang at Jamioki and then we were walking home.
Yeah, that sounds
and
right.
a car literally like crossed 3 lanes of traffic to hit on Christy because she's a beacon. Same with Stone. Stone just went for her. Like he spotted her and he was just like, yep, that's what I want to talk to right now. So I remember we stayed for a while and we talked to Stone like in a booth at the Hard Rock. And then he started going on about asking if there was any pharmacies that were still open nearby. And certainly in the early 2000s in I don't know, certainly in Toronto, no, there wasn't. We didn't, maybe till midnight at most, but like there was no 24-hour pharmacies that I remember, maybe a couple. But anyway, he started to tell you, I believe, about how he had back problems and really needed to get his hands on some codeine.
Yeah. But at one point he like outright asked if we happened to have any on us.
And codeine feels so specific. I was like, is it
Very
a code
specific.
for something else? Like, is this a code for other drugs or something?
We
But
were
I
too
remember-
innocent to know.
We were, but I remember being like, do you want to hook up with this guy? Like, should I back away? Like, how should I handle this? Whatever.
Mhm.
And I remember the way I remember it was the first 10 minutes you were like kind of into it. And then over time it was just like, oh, I'm not. This man is a drug addict who's looking for a hit.
There is a reason you should talk to someone for more than 10 minutes before deciding if you're going to sleep with them or not.
And you did. And that's the
yes.
positive thing.
And I did. And we walked away.
We did.
I can't believe we survived. Like that band Generation, they had a trailer parked outside and they were like, hey, you gals, I don't know why everyone is referring to us as gals,
I
but
like it.
you gals seem like you had a good time. You want free shirts? And we were like, yes, please. And so they gave us shirts and then they were like, you want to come in the camper? And we were like, no, we don't. Smartest move we ever made because I truly believe we wouldn't have come back.
No, they
It's
also
so
gave us free
sketchy.
CDs. They gave us
They
their CD
did.
for free. I think they appreciated the fact that we were being street smart and like, no way are we getting into your weird, gross camper van. But the last thing I do remember so vividly is we had been hanging out with Stone and also like none of his bandmates were sitting with him and us. And it made me feel like maybe he was the one track mind, which was codeine. This is so specific. Like, are you getting cough syrup? Anyway. And then I remember us being like, I think we had a code. I think we had a code word that it was like, I think we had some sort of code word where it was like, we need to get out of here. And one of us dropped the code word and the other person was like, yes. And then I remember he was very upset we were leaving and then got like mad we were leaving, right?
Yes.
Like, didn't it get a little bit dark?
Yes, with it like in a second, like just flipped as soon as he realized, oh yeah, you've lost out on this.
Yeah, I mean, he was into it. He was not interested in me at all. But then and then the last thing I remember is us going like, yes, this is the right move. This guy's getting aggressive. This is creepy. Yes. And then as we left, he like followed us out down the stairs. And then I remember him like in the snow because I just remember this so vividly, like us turning around and he was still there, like watching us walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Stone. You gotta look him up. White pages. There's got to be a way that we can find out his last name if we do like deep Googles and then we white page this shit. And then next week we got to talk about it.
Yes, but we're not convinced his real name is Stone, right?
You're right. It was probably not his not his Christian name, if that's what you're saying. There's
got to be a trail from like follow the band, do a little deeper. Oh, yes. Yeah, I got this. I'll write it down and
I love
look
it.
into it.
Stay tuned to be continued. The Stone saga, which ironically, Stone Phillips also, wasn't he on Dateline? Stone Phillips for years? So it could be his given name. There is a real Stone, although who's to say Stone Phillips' given name is Stone? He could have chosen that.
I just assumed the bassist chose it because he was,
stoned.
100%.
Well, he sure wanted to be. Again, codeine. Yeah. The last thing you'd ever expect to be hounded for.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into the episode. Again, this is Hope Whispers. It is a Dateline NBC mystery, and it just spoke to me. So we're gonna give you a brief synopsis, and then of course, as we go, you'll get more of the story. You guys know how the show works. What am I doing? It's episode 12. Doesn't it feel like more than 12 episodes? We were talking about this before we started. I was like, it feels like we've done 30, but anyway, it's a joy. In June 2019, so again, very recent, Jeff Green told his daughter Ellie that her mother Angela had been taken to a mental hospital. 3 weeks later, Jeff broke the news that Angela had died of a stroke. But when Angela's family got suspicious and started their own investigation, they discovered that no death certificate had ever been issued and that Jeff told police an entirely different story. So what exactly happened to Angela Green? So this story starts, obviously, the whole thing is so bizarre, right? Every step of the way, and I think that was why I was so compelled by this. And I said to you immediately, like, you got to watch this, tell me what you think. And you were like, we're doing it. Because it was just such a bizarre story. Obviously, Angela and Jeff had been married for some time. Ellie, their daughter, was an only child. So they were kind of this tight-knit or seemingly tight-knit family unit. And it really seems interesting to me that there's so many details of this that just kind of it happened in the way that they did. It's just a very odd way, certainly on Jeff's part. I think it's a very odd reaction to the death of your wife or potential death of your wife. And I want to crack it. So we got to get into this thing.
Yeah.
So this starts on June 19th, 2019. Obviously. And so this whole thing starts, and they kind of allude to it in the episode, that Ellie and her mom, Angela, had gotten into a fight, and Angela threw Ellie out of the house. So I'm assuming she was living at home at the time, but she was away at college. Was that what it was?
She had just finished her freshman year at the University of Kansas.
Yes.
And then she spent a month in Italy studying abroad. And she had just come back. She'd only been back for like 5 days. She just started seeing a boy who was in the episode. And her mother just did not care for it. There's a whole thing where it's saying like her mother, her entire life was this daughter.
Right.
That's all, like, she put everything into this daughter. And so the idea that the daughter now like lives further away and doesn't need her as much probably put a little strain on her.
Right.
And then for her to get a boyfriend was probably even more upsetting, because in high school, Ellie was not allowed to date.
Oh, interesting.
She wasn't allowed to go on sleepovers. She wasn't allowed any sort of things like that, because her mother was so focused on like education and stuff and all kinds of academics. I mean, this girl, she's like she was 18 at the time when this happened last year, and she speaks fluently 4 languages.
Wow.
She like is an accomplished pianist. She was valedictorian of her school. She was also like tutoring other students. Like, she's super impressive. Like, I will never speak 2 languages, let alone 4. So
I know languages are not my thing either. They're so hard.
Yeah.
So she was, and so it does. I do remember that they alluded as well to saying something about Angela was upset that they hadn't been spending very much time together.
Yeah.
Which, listen, it is a huge adjustment. Obviously, I'm sure many parents seeing their baby birds fly out of the nest must be, overwhelming at best. But certainly, since they had such a tight leash on her in high school, and then in a very short amount of time, things drastically changed, in terms of she's gone to Italy for a month to study, and then she comes back and she has a boyfriend, and I'm sure she wants to be spending time with him. I could see a mom who is obviously very, what's the right word? Involved in her child's life. I could see that being that easy cause of a fight.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she suddenly feels like she's just not needed anymore. And it's like, all right, fine. Go off, do your own thing. You don't need me anyway. Take a hike. Just go. She said that they've had fights before, but she's never once thrown her out before.
Right.
So that was a big thing, because she'd never done it.
Interesting. So what else? What are the other key points here? So Angela Green was an immigrant. That's important to note.
Yes. She was born in China. I'm going to respect the Chinese by not pronouncing the city she was from. She was 51 at the time she disappeared. Her parents were both college professors. She had an older sister who immigrated to the United States about a decade before Angela did. Angela was also like, she was a real homebody. Like everybody was like, she didn't drive at night, or she didn't like to drive at night. She didn't even like to go out by herself. So if she had to do like the grocery store or something, she would either take her husband or her daughter with her, because she just didn't like going out. And the main thing is, she could write and read English, but she couldn't really speak it. So
that's interesting.
Even after like 20 some years of living in America, like in the States and in Kansas of all places, where I'm sure it's not, heavily Mandarin or anything, like I'm sure English is quite the main language in and around Kansas. And her husband, Jeff, only spoke English. He could not understand her at all. So there was a lot of issues between them because of the language barrier. And at some point, when Ellie was old enough, she kind of had to go back and forth between them to try and like help translate, because neither were kind of interested in learning each other's language. And to that, I'm going to say, if movies have taught me anything, it's that when you truly love somebody, you learn their fucking language. Colin Firth fell in love in just few weeks in Love Actually.
Yeah.
And he went and learned her language.
And she learned his.
It is meant to be. Like, it's just...
See, that story never resonated with me in Love Actually. I don't know why. Everyone loves that story.
There's a moment, and I'm sorry for anybody that this might spoil, but that movie's over a decade old. So,
at least, yeah.
There's a moment when Colin Firth goes in to kiss her, and he puts a hand across her cheek, which is to pull in, which is my favorite move on movies. And he has his hand there, and he takes his thumb and he gently wipes it across her lips and then just pulls her in. It is so hot. I want to just say
I'm very familiar with the movie, but it's never affected me as much as hearing you describe it. And I was like, oh. I've viewed that many times, but hearing you describe it, I mean, I guess this is why people like, romance novels. Yeah, no, I get it. Listen, I love the movie, and I know that a lot of people have a lot of hate for Love Actually. I love it. I just felt like that story wasn't my personal favorite.
Oh, yeah. Like, of all of the stories, it was lower down, because, I mean, I think I only really loved it because I loved Colin Firth.
Yeah, I get that.
There's a lot of issues in there. I just also really felt for him because his girlfriend was cheating on him, and it was a whole thing. But, I mean... obviously, the number one relationship we care the most about in that movie is Hugh Grant, right? Are you not going to say yes?
I love that one, but you know what it is for me?
Say no.
You know what it is for me? It's here I go. I'm going to well up right away. It's Liam Neeson and his stepson. That's the relationship for me. That's the love story for me.
Here's the thing. I was thinking with my crotch and thinking just about the love. I wasn't thinking with my heart and thinking about just relationship love.
Yeah.
And that moment when he calls him dad.
Oh, yep. Here we go.
I can't.
No. I find personally it's the most moving of the stories, personally.
Oh, I mean, God, I'm I swear to God, we could do a full episode discussing that movie because there's a lot of things. I also really like Jim and Judy.
Oh yeah, that's cute.
I like that couple. They're really fantastic. I mean, and you're right, there's more than just the like romantic love. There's like a brother sister and then the father son, and there's just a lot of stuff going on in that movie. And if you hate it, just maybe give it another chance.
Give it a shot.
I accept that you hate it. You accept that we love it.
Absolutely.
And we just agree to disagree and we move on with our lives, because if it gives somebody joy, then what does it hurt you? You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
It gives us joy. Be happy that it gives us joy.
Thank you very much. I couldn't agree more. All right. So back to the case. So Jeff met Angela overseas. He met her and then she came over to America to marry him. As you've already touched on, obviously they were having some communication issues their entire relationship, for Ellie's entire life.
Can we hit on them meeting for a second?
I'd like you to.
Because I have something I would like to say about it. At the time, this was like approximately 1996 or 1997. Okay. The relationship seemed very short, so I'm going to say probably more like 97. At the time, he was an auto mechanic and a car salesman. They're saying he was in China for work. I don't buy that even a little bit. They met, a friend of Angela's parents set them up. And then after they go on their date, decide that they're going to continue seeing each other, but obviously he lives in Kansas. So they wrote letters back and forth. And then within a year, she moved all the way over to Kansas.
Right.
To be with him. And then they had to get married within 90 days for immigration purposes. Here's the thing for me.
Talk to me.
I don't buy this horse shit. He was in China for work. Come on. So you know what I think it is? And no one has said this anywhere involving this case. So I feel like someone's not going to like me saying it, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think Angela was a mail order bride.
Listen, here's the thing.
Uh-huh.
That is something that, and listen, that term is obviously something that is quite antiquated. That people, because this is a real thing that still exists. It's existed for, decades and decades. There's actually a woman that I know, and very tragically, her mother passed when she was, I'm not sure, a preteen-ish, I think. And their dad brought a catalog and said, let's pick out your new mom.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And listen, and he did. And he brought this woman to America. Now, the good news is that she was great and they had a great life, and she was a great stepmom.
Sure. Yeah.
Great, happy ending to the story. But I only offer that because I don't think that this is as rare as people think. And it's also like, listen, I watch a lot of 90 Day Fiance. I watch a lot of those documentaries, and I say all the power to you. People meet how they meet. And I think that, listen, have I been pushed to the point where I thought, could I buy a bride? I'm kidding. But you know what I mean? Like, so I just think that there is a real possibility that it was more that he was going to meet her for a reason, or going to meet someone for a reason, whether or not it was an actual service involved or whatever. I mean, who knows? But I do think that you're right. It did ring a bell for me too. When it was like, he was working as a mechanic and was in China on business. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty high-end mechanic. Like, mechanics make great money, don't get me wrong, but like, why would he need to take a business trip to China? That just seems so random.
Yeah, it's immediately it stuck with me, and how people just keep trying to like brush it off. I will say, I mean, no shade whatsoever. I'm
Yeah.
also not suggesting mail order. I mean, I know a lot of, especially probably years ago, not as much now. I'm sure a lot of it was like the parents like forced the child into this, or
Right.
even in some cases it has been known like the parents have sold
Yes.
their daughter to somebody.
Yes.
In a case like this, like Angela would have been about like 30, almost 30, and she was, the quote was, very eager for a family. So I just feel like it's more than possible she put herself out there and
Yeah.
was like, hey, there's slim pickings around here. I just want a family, a nice person, whatever. And that's how they meet. Um, the reason I brought it up, I mean, China is one of the main countries of East Asian mail order brides. I know the term isn't the best, but also I found an article on mail order brides from 1995.
Interesting.
And the ads for it say things like gorgeous Pacific women, pen pals, romance. And like the main thing of it is that you meet somebody and then you correspond with them through letters for a considerable amount of time. And then when you're ready, you pay for them to come over. And there's a specific catalog, one specific one anyway, where it's like, here's this catalog, it's free, but it costs you $10 for every address that you want to be able to contact these women. Or you can pay like $400 for a 1-year subscription that gets you about 3,000 addresses, which
3,000
feels very sad to me. But just that you would be like, I'm going to send that many out. The other reason that I was kind of like, maybe, Angela had an older sister who immigrated to the States before her. She also conveniently immigrated to Kansas. And they actually lived close together, and they like saw each other all the time, hung out at holidays, all of that stuff. But then this sister, Catherine, moved to New York, and then they kind of drifted apart. But I just find it wildly fascinating that both of them just happened to meet.
Well, and you know what else? It's possible that her sister was involved in that kind of service, and then perhaps met Jeff. And then it could be honest that they were like, hey, I have a sister, you should meet her. Like, and then they used the same kind of template that Catherine and her partner used. You know what I mean? Like, it's feasible that, it could go either way, but it definitely feels like, it definitely feels to me like the intention of that trip to China was to meet someone, whether it was her or women in general.
Yes.
It definitely felt to me, again, I agree that it was like, I don't know that, and many mechanics that are taking business trips to Asia. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. If you're a mechanic listening and you often, frequent China on business trips, tell me I'm wrong. I'd be
Let us know.
I'd be happy to eat crow on that. But yeah,
I mean, it was also said, their daughter said that it seemed like their relationship was more business associate as opposed to romantic partner.
Interesting.
Because they didn't even share a bedroom.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it's more than possible. Like, and she also, like, Angela relied on Jeff for pretty much everything. Because again, she didn't really like going anywhere by herself, probably due to language issues. And just being in a place she just wasn't comfortable or familiar with.
Right.
She was the stay-at-home mom. They had their daughter like a year or two after she'd moved. And she just put all of her time and efforts into her. And she dealt with like all of the yard work, cleaning, cooking, all of that kind of stuff. And so she relied on him for money because she wasn't getting money from anywhere. So I can see it as like the business relationship.
Right.
More than anything. The other thing, when she came to the States, she found out that he had lied to her about his age.
No.
He said he was much younger than he is, but he's about 15 plus years older than her, and he had lied to her about it. Also, when she arrived, somebody else was surprised that Angela was in the country, and that person would be Jeff's ex-wife, who had no idea that he was even seeing somebody, let alone planning to marry them. Someone else, I guess, who was surprised was his daughter.
Whoa. Okay, here we go.
Mhm.
This is what I like.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this daughter, because they don't reference that in the episode at all.
Well, it seems, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm so sorry. I did go through your Facebook page. She doesn't really mention her father. Ellie has said, and I'll get into how I found that out. She's never even met this girl.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I have a feeling that when he initially got divorced, he just like cut ties and whatever, and just doesn't deal with his daughter at all.
Right.
Because she doesn't mention him anywhere.
Right.
But when you do a background check on him, like Brandy and I do,
Of course.
he's only connected to 2 people based on like address, and that one of them, I don't remember who the one person was, but the second one was the ex-wife, and that's how I found her, because I went looking through her, and then I found the daughter, who has her mother's last name.
Wow.
Yeah, the mother she has remarried. She seems very happy now.
Good for her.
But
so
they
let
did
me get
not
this.
see this. They did not see Angela coming. They had no idea.
And so also, for just to clarify, so you went into Jeff's white pages, and he's only connected to his ex-wife and someone else. He's not connected on there to his daughter Ellie or Angela.
No.
Interesting.
So
That's
I'm
weird.
very curious, because Angela would have to be in some way linked to that address.
Yeah, unless she was here illegally. I mean, that's the only thing I could think.
I mean, they did say when they went looking for a death certificate and couldn't find it, the only thing they found was a marriage certificate. So I would assume if they have a marriage certificate, she would have had to come in legally.
I would think that.
But I find it very interesting that they aren't linked. Because, I mean, you could even, like, if you go on, and this is a throwback to the first episode, if you check Rob Andrus from the 13 Minutes episode, but Patrice is listed there.
Right.
I mean,
well, I guess it also, I wonder what that is kind of, what's the algorithm that White Pages is using? Because if Angela didn't have her own credit card, for example, or her own utility bills or phone bills, it is feasible that there may not really be much of a paper trail for her. Now, in terms of Ellie being very young, it's also feasible that if she didn't have her own credit card or bank accounts or whatever at that time, if she was using ones through her parents or something, there may not be a record of her either. But it is true. That being said, that scenario is still quite odd, right? That somebody would not have any sort of proof of their existence.
Well, especially because Angela did have, she had a passport and a driver's license.
Interesting.
So you would think somehow the driver's license info would at least link her to an address.
Right.
But I mean, if you work for White Pages, hit us up, because we have some questions.
We have a few questions.
Yeah.
If Christy could just get 20 minutes with your computer, okay? The inside White Pages computer system.
Look. Just maybe. Just like pass your password. I'll be gentle.
Give her 10 minutes. Give her 10 minutes.
I'll put an extra name in the draw.
That's what we can make good on.
Yeah.
That's what we can make good on.
Yeah.
All right. So we've gotten kind of an insight into Angela and Jeff's relationship, your theory, which I think that there is some real validity to there. Absolutely. And then Ellie. So what else do you want to talk about in terms of Ellie? Now, obviously, she was the one who the episode of Dateline was centering around. You know, I visited her. I know it goes without saying, you've also looked at her social medias, looked at her Instagram and stuff like that. And she is making the rounds, obviously trying to do different TV appearances and podcast appearances to raise awareness about her mother's case. Because her mother's case, which we will, again, we haven't really gotten into some of the details for people who aren't watching, but we will as we go on. It's very odd because as there's been no body that we know of, right? There's been no kind of paper trail, no death certificate. Jeff isn't coming forward with any sort of information about where she was, what state she was in. His story keeps changing. At first, she was taken in a parking lot and taken to a mental institution, which that to begin with, I'm like, I don't know that happens, first of all. No. Then he was like, someone called and said she had died, and I don't know who it was, but I took their word for it. Then he said, well, I got her ashes in an urn. And then, weeks later he opened it and he was like, but I opened it weeks later or however long later, and there was nothing in there. Maybe she is alive. Like, it's so bizarre. And, the fact that he also had told Ellie not to tell Angela's family that she had died. And then Ellie respected that, which I thought was interesting because that's a huge, bizarre ask. I'll call it like it is. I think a lot of people would look at that and question that. If someone's saying, if a man is saying my wife has died, I have no proof of it, and I don't want you to tell her family, that's an alarm bell to me. Now I know obviously Ellie was very young at the time. Also, I'm sure in shock about her mother's disappearance, potential death, all of the above. Also the fact that her father had seemingly been lying to her and whatnot. But it is interesting to me that she did kind of respect his wishes and not originally tell his family, but she does eventually tell his mother's sister, correct? Yes. And that's how she got into contact with her cousin, who they weren't close growing up, I guess, because one was in New York, one was in Kansas, but they've really come together. They're like this, again, this is what made me think of us. Now, again, we have a lifetime together, but that it's a cousin duo looking for justice, and they've really teamed up to try and solve this thing.
Yeah. I mean, and good on them for trying. I mean, because Ellie, I get, like, I had the same thought of, like, if someone's like, hey, someone you're close to is dead, please don't tell their family. That's weird. Like, alarm bells should be going off. She did, like, at some point, like, ask a lot of questions of him, and he would just always shut her down. And she said at one point she just, like, stopped pushing him because she was worried if she pushed too hard, she would lose him, and she'd already lost a parent. She didn't want to lose another. She was 18 at the time. Had just, like, barely left home. And, like, in high school, she wasn't allowed sleepovers or parties or going on dates. And so I don't think she had a lot of, like, world experience kind of thing. Sure. So she was probably, forgive the term, but she was probably a little bit sheltered and probably very excited to get out and do her own thing. And so then to have a parent like, oh, your mother's dead. And then the idea of, okay, well, I've lost that parent, but if I lose the other, then that's the only thing, like, tethering you to that family.
Absolutely. And also, you're at face value, why would you ever assume your living parent was lying? I'm sure, being also an only child with the three of them, like, I'm an only child, technically. And, you spend a lot of I was an only child with a single mom for most of my life. And you spend a lot of time together. Like, you're in each other's business. And I know that, families have varying degrees of that, but I think there is a specific thing with only children, which I can speak to. But you know what I mean? Like, I do think you have a different relationship potentially with a parent. I know, again, like, my mom and I were very close. My mom and I were very much more like roommates by the time I was a teenager, and sisters than we were mother and daughter potentially. This doesn't sound like this is the case in this dynamic, obviously, with them, but it is interesting to me that I see your point is my point. And I do agree that I feel like someone who potentially was very close to her mom had also had a fight with her mom right before she apparently disappeared. I could see not wanting to question your dad either. And like, okay, I guess I have to respect what he wants. And she wasn't close to those relatives herself. So maybe she didn't feel at first like she had an obligation, but of course then she eventually did. So that's a moot point anyway. But it is just, again, an interesting detail to note that he was like, don't tell anybody, don't tell her family. And he didn't want to have any sort of funeral or a memorial or anything like that for her, which is also a red flag.
Well, there are so many red flags in this. I mean, another red flag that I find, and I'm only noticing it because I've highlighted it in my notes. Ellie had said in an interview that she wasn't allowed to go on dates in high school. Well, in May of 2017, she went as somebody's grad date to the prom. And then a year later, I guess technically 2 years later, she started dating him. Like that was her boyfriend. And of course, yes, because I went through his Instagram as well. And she even commented, "Oh, wow, didn't even tag your own date." So it's proof that
right.
So maybe I don't know if they made an exception for that evening or not, or if she was just trying to make it seem like she was more sheltered than she actually was.
Interesting.
And I know I've referenced this movie before, but maybe it's a little bit footloose, like the daughter that's like, I'm this good girl. And then next thing you know, she's in red cowboy boots, smoking a joint with Kevin Bacon.
Well, listen, I can also speak to that because I was a good girl also, but I was also, not in cowboy boots, but I was definitely smoking joints.
You still are a good girl.
Thank you so much. I do pride myself on that. But I do also believe that there is, when you have, as a preteen and teen, when you have like really strict rules, I do think that the tendency is to kind of go the other way, which I certainly did in a few ways. I was still good and a great student and all the above, but it sounds like she was too. But that doesn't mean she didn't want to cut loose, foot loose, get out your Sunday shoes.
She just wants to dance. Just let her dance.
Listen, come on.
Yeah,
I get it. Okay, so what else you got for me? Is there other things of note about Ellie?
I'm just really, I have questions about her.
Right.
This is a bit early to get into, but when you look at a case, you got to look at everybody.
Absolutely.
You can't go into it assuming people are innocent and moving on with your life.
Right.
You got to look at everybody. So, yeah, I looked around and I just feel like there's something about her that doesn't sit with me. I can't imagine what it's like to lose a parent.
No.
Especially as a teenager. Yeah. But I'm also just like, and I'm so glad that she's now finally making the rounds and letting the story, trying to find some answers and get the justice that her mother deserves. And that's great. But it also just seems very, I can't think of a classy way to say it, really. It's just, it also seems like her dream is to be an actress.
Oh, okay.
And so she'll like make a post and be like, hey, I want to talk about my mom. And here's this beautiful photo of us from my childhood. Great. And then she'll make another post where it's like, I'm talking on Dateline tonight. And it's just a picture of her in like a gorgeous evening gown. And it's like, what's that got to do with anything? Like, it just feels her entire Instagram. She is like a 19-year-old girl. So it's very like model like,
right.
But it just feels like are you getting the word out for all of the right reasons? Is my
I see what you're
case.
saying.
I feel for the situation she's in, but I just can't help but question, just are all of the motive.
Well, and listen, it's such a tough, I mean, social media is so weird to begin with. And I can't imagine being someone who's grown up with it as a child. And because it's like, how are we using this? What are the lines? What makes sense? What doesn't, and
she was technically only allowed a cell phone once she got to her senior year of high school.
Wow.
So she wouldn't have had probably access to Instagram or anything like that until she was a senior.
Yeah. Well, listen, again, it is such a hard line to toe. And you know what, in a sense, I can see her point a little bit, to see the other side. It's like, what is the picture that you choose for that post? Like, it must be such a bizarre thing to have to say, like, well, I'm on Dateline tonight talking about the disappearance of my mother and my father's potentially involved. Like, I can see a little bit being like, well, I don't know, here you go.
Sure.
It must be such a bizarre thing to navigate, and a bizarre thing too, because she's gone from having so many rules to now, because I don't believe she has much of a relationship with her dad at this point, right?
They only speak via text. He didn't even contact her on her birthday. Oh, and really, it's like they have one text conversation every few months because he is still helping to pay tuition.
Right.
So he'll like help her with that and like helps pay her rent.
He seems very, well, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it now. All right. The gloves are coming off about Jeff. He seems very, non-emotional, but to a point of like, I don't want to throw around the term sociopath because I think people do that all the time and they misuse it, etc. But it does feel like he has got a real disconnect here. You know what I mean? Like, your daughter, your only child, well, excuse me, not his only child now, thanks to your revelation, but your very young grieving child is obviously confused about everything that's going on. You've not been forthright about any of this information. She's trying to respect you, but then at the same time feels like, I don't feel like this makes sense. And then that's how you handle the situation, by basically like removing yourself from her life. Like, that feels to me like somebody who truly is devoid of emotion. And I think that that's important to really hit here, because it just doesn't seem to me plausible that a father would be like, well, your mother's died, bye. You know what I mean? Like, that's just horrifying. So I guess all of this to say too, I think maybe, in terms of some of her potential, her social media choices and stuff like that, I say we give her a break, because I think that she's really going through it. She's really going through it right now. I'm feeling, like,
her father
completely abandoned.
Her father couldn't have been great growing up with.
Yeah.
His entire family has completely cut off Ellie from the moment she started talking to media. They just see ya, and they want nothing to do with her. Her boyfriend, or her ex-boyfriend, because they are no longer together.
Really?
Really?
Oh, because I did see that she still has a post up that they had their 1-year anniversary in June. Since then?
Since Halloween.
So this is really recent.
And I'm going to get in close to tell you.
I'm in the vault with you.
Perfect. She posted Halloween and had multiple costumes. He was in that post.
Yeah.
He isn't anymore. His side of those photos still up. She's taken them off of hers.
Now, do you know for a fact that they've broken up, or is this your theory? Oh, you do?
Yes. I also, to be fair, watching the episode, they kept talking about them as a couple, and they would just, there's something that didn't feel couple about them. Like the way they would walk, like one was like a half step ahead, and they always made sure there was space between them. And it seemed like they may have been a couple, but weren't anymore. So I'm wondering if they were on the outs at that point. But I mean, if I can find my note quickly, I'll just jump to it.
Yeah.
She did a Q&A on Instagram.
Okay.
I read through it. Her account's not private. I didn't do anything wrong.
No.
Somebody asked if she was still with her boyfriend. She said nope. Somebody then asked, why did you guys break up? And she said, I realized I deserved better. So glad I did.
Interesting.
So, but she still considers his family her family, like super tight, because his family essentially took her in when she had nowhere else to go after her mom kicked her out.
Well, and it's important to note also that they did that very early in their relationship, because they started dating in June of 2019, and then her mother went missing or she got kicked out
5 days
June.
later.
5 days. Thank you very much. So good on that family. I mean, bless them for opening their home to her, because otherwise it feels like she may have been, in a really precarious situation. So that's great that they've been so kind to her and all of that. But it is an interesting detail to note once again. Now we got to take a quick break, but there is so much more to come after this. So stay tuned for more about Hope Whispers. All right. I know we went a little rogue there, but we've been an hour, so I felt like we needed to take the break.
No, I was going to say the break was flexible depending on, because it's tough to judge. I don't know how long certain things are going to take, but
you never knew.
But I like that.
And now listen, I wasn't trying to come at you too hard about Ellie, but I was just trying to do
we need the devil's advocate.
Yeah. Again, and just because I feel like there is a very large possibility she will listen to this. So I feel like
you never know.
But I think that was good though, that you put it out there. And then I was like, you know what, let's give her, it's just,
we gotta see two sides, right?
We gotta see two sides.
Yeah.
Well, especially, in this situation.
Yeah.
All right. So should we get back into it?
Yeah. And then I think we just start with like the full timeline and just get into all this bananas.
Okay. So we start with the full timeline. We get into the lawyer theories and we're out.
Yeah.
Okay. We should probably do like around 30 or try to keep it around 30. So I'll keep us moving.
Sure.
All right. Here we go. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails, where we are discussing the Dateline mystery, Hope Whispers. Now, let's just get into the timeline. Let's dive right in, because the twists and turns this thing takes are nutty. So, Christy, be our Sherpa. Lead us on this journey.
All right. Picture it. I feel a little Sophia Petrillo when I do that, and it just gives me joy.
I love it.
Prairie Village, Kansas.
Okay. I'm listening.
June 19th, 2019. Ellie gets back from her first year at college. She's just done a month in Italy, and she has a huge fight with her mother.
Right.
Probably I can't find anywhere online that specifically says what the fight was, but it's easy to guess, like probably Ellie's trying to push her independence. Angela's trying to, grasp onto like her daughter who she feels she's losing. Right. Because with little relationship with her husband, she was probably like, without her daughter, what's she got? Right. Yeah. What's the point of sticking around this house? So at one point, Angela says to Ellie, well, you might as well leave now. And told her, get the fuck out.
Right.
So Ellie left. 3 days later, Jeff texted his daughter and said, oh, by the way, you can come home now. Mom was taken to a mental health facility and won't be back for a while. Now, she then questioned that and was like, well, wait, what's going on? Like, how did you get her to a mental health facility?
Yeah.
This is his text response. We met the mental health people in the store parking lot, and it was a struggle. Better than trying to pry her out of the house. And she always looks good when she goes out. So she did not have the embarrassment of house clothes or an untidy house. Oh, and don't let anyone know about your mom, including her New York family, until I know more about her condition. So,
okay, so this seems to me like he's saying maybe he was a part of this, that it was like she needed to get committed, and then he was like, well, we'll get her when she's out so that she looks presentable and doesn't feel as embarrassed. Although that rationale kind of falls flat when it's like, so it's less embarrassing to be taken from a parking lot in public? I mean, okay.
I mean, the last time I can think of anybody being like taken in public to a mental health facility is Belle's dad in Beauty and the Beast. I just don't feel like that happens.
Crazy old Maurice. Always good for a laugh. Yeah, I don't know that it does happen, but listen, again, we're trying to look at this from all sides. So, okay, let's just plow through, because this, again, it takes some twists and turns, this entire timeline, and Jeff's story certainly takes some twists and turns. But that's interesting because they didn't read the exact text on the episode, and that's interesting that because in that context, it seems like he is suggesting that he was a part of it, that like maybe the subtext is that fight that your mother had with you was crazy, and I think that she's not well, and so I thought that she should get checked in for a bit.
Sure.
Again, I'm following his train of thought, and I know it's just going to derail very quickly.
Sure.
So,
well, speaking of texts that he sent that weren't on the show,
yes.
For one, he asked Ellie to come to the house to sort through her mother's stuff. Why would you do that if she was just away but going to come back?
That's weird. Yeah.
Also, this text that was out of nowhere, so I don't really get where he was going with it. I would like to talk about the good things Mom did.
That's wild.
Especially the way it's like the stuff she did, making it sound like past tense.
Yeah.
Like as though there's not going to be anything good ever coming from her again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. Very good point. So the 19th of June, she's in the fight. Yeah. The 22nd of June, she's apparently, quote, taken to this mental hospital.
Yeah.
These texts are flying. What happens next?
July 16th, Ellie and her boyfriend, Zach, attend a Frisbee tournament at a local high school. They get home around 10 p.m. Minutes later, Jeff pulls into the driveway and says, well, Angela died of a stroke. He specifically said Angela. He didn't say your mom. It was Angela died of a stroke. And then he left.
Oh my God, this poor girl. She's just like, that's wild.
Yeah. There is no chance that this dude ever shows proper emotion for anything.
Yeah.
Again, like his wife of over 20 years is not around, and his reaction is just like, like it's insane.
Well, the other thing I want to just quickly note that I just put together right now is that if you were to commit somebody, you can get someone committed. You can 5150 somebody to a hospital. I know this not because I've been through it. I just watch a lot of intervention. And, but that's only for 3 days, I believe. And I don't think that you can keep someone against their will for longer. I mean, I guess if maybe the doctors determined that this person was like extremely out of their minds or a threat to themselves or someone else, maybe, I don't know the ins and outs of what the like legality of that is, but it does seem wild to me that she could be just, quote, in a mental hospital. Because also, is there a mental hospital in this small town in Kansas? Like,
that's the other thing. He could not tell the name of the hospital because he didn't know it. He couldn't tell the place, like the city it was located in. He just said it was down south somewhere.
I mean, again, either if he's telling the truth, he's a terrible husband because he obviously disregarded his wife's life immensely to the point that he didn't know where she was during this time, or he's lying and he knows exactly where she is because he either had something to do with it or whatever. So, I think either way, there's got to be some level of responsibility that comes back to him.
Oh, yeah.
So he shows up. He's like, Angela's dead. Bye, which is horrifying. Okay,
Yes.
then what?
Well, Zach's mom, Sarah, was like, she reached out to him and was like, could you maybe come over tomorrow for lunch so we could talk about this? He comes over. She's like, it was the most awkward lunch of my life. It was hard to get any sort of reaction out of him or like any information, but they were like, you know what? You can't judge how somebody's grieving. So we don't know. So we're just whatever he gives us, great. He told them, I don't know where the hospital is. It was somewhere down south. He doesn't want a memorial. He doesn't want an obituary. He wants nothing. And he really wants Ellie to not tell Angela's family, namely her sister in New York. And I guess her family, her parents back in China. And so Ellie didn't really know how to take that, didn't want to lose her dad. And I'm sure there's also a part of her, she's young enough, didn't want to go against something that a parent had said. So, okay, great. So she decides to say nothing about it. Then February 13th of 2020, Ellie finally breaks down and calls Angela's sister, Catherine, in New York and tells her Angela has died. Now, Catherine had tried calling Angela recently because there was a family wedding coming up and they had not heard back from Angela whether she was coming or not. But she said it wasn't rare or unusual for Angela not to reach out because they had grown quite distant over the years,
right?
Since they lived so far apart. And so she's like, it wasn't that surprising to me that she wasn't responding. And then when she got this news, she was really surprised. And she's like, well, is there a death certificate? To which Ellie goes, what's a death certificate? And they're like, you need to get a death certificate.
Right.
So the next day, we're still February 2020.
Yeah.
Ellie drives to the Vital Statistics office in Topeka to request a copy of her mother's death certificate. They search through records and all they can find that has Angela's name on it is her marriage certificate to Jeff. There is no death certificate there anywhere. There is, in fact, no record of her death in any state in the United States. So then Catherine and her daughter, Michelle, who is the cousin half of the duo on the show, they decide to request a police welfare check on Angela, send the cops to her house. Police arrive and Jeff goes, oh, yeah, she's just away with friends for the weekend.
This is wild.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in the show, too, there was a reference that one of the police officers they interviewed, and they were like, well, have you talked to him? And they were like, well, he refused. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I mean, I guess maybe I'm going by film and TV and I'm wrong, but like, why isn't there more being done about this case? Why aren't they trying to piece together a timeline? I don't know, a body or her real body if she is somehow still alive. Like, how is it that you can just say, like, I'm not going to talk to you, and the police go, so sorry, sir. Sorry to bother you. Like, you're the police. Like, you got to talk to him. You get a warrant. Like, and wouldn't you think that him, the fact that Ellie has been involved with the police and has gone to them, she's tape recorded conversations with her and her dad for the police. Wouldn't you think that would be enough for them to get a warrant to basically force him to talk?
Oh, you would think so. I mean, they do, coming up here shortly, they do get 2 search warrants.
Okay.
But I see your point. Absolutely. I again, maybe movies and TV have ruined us.
Maybe.
But you can't tell me that if the cops are like, you're a suspect in this.
Yes.
We want to talk to you, that I have a right to go, nah.
That just feels implausible to me. Because again, okay, she's away with friends. Who? You know? Yeah. And I know that and this was recent. So where's her cell phone? Where's her friend's phone number? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's just like an easy next question where if you're doing a welfare check, like, why aren't you following up on it?
You want to know where her cell phone was?
Yes.
At the house.
Okay, come on.
With her purse, her driver's license, her passport.
No.
Her wallet. She never took out money leading up to this. She didn't have money on her own. So if she was going to go somewhere, what money would she have gone with? And also, she kind of stuck to herself. She was just kind of quieter, very soft-spoken. Her main focus in life was her daughter. She loved her daughter so much. And she was a really protective mom, a little bit strict, just wanted what was best for her daughter. But kind of just like all of the moms in the area were like, I knew her to see her, but the child, like she wasn't allowed play dates. So it's like one mom had said she was only ever in their house once. Their children grew up together, going to school together, but she was in the house once, and then they ended up like ordering pizza or something. And so the next day, this mom was like, you know what? I'm going to go over and give her my phone number in case, we want to like hang out, be buddies, whatever,
right,
as moms do. She went over, no answer at the door. So she left her phone number, wrote it down, left it there, never called her. And this was like a decade ago. And so she said, like, it's just, she didn't seem interested in being, with the other moms. And I get it, because it can be so intimidating. It's also such a crazy world to have like your child becomes friends with a child. And then it's like, well, I guess you're now forced to be friends with this child's parents because, it's like, well, now your children know each other and they want to hang out, but they're young enough. You have to be the one to organize it, or then the child comes over and then you're going to be the one hanging out with this other child. So it's just, once your child picks friends, then it's just, well, I guess they've chosen your friends, so it's just an automatic thing. So I get the whole, like, I'm good. Like this woman also said, like, when Angela's like taking Ellie to school when Ellie was younger, she was always very put together. Whereas this woman was like, I'm lucky to get out the door in sweatpants. And I'm like, let me tell you, there has been more than one school drop off in my fuzzy Batman pants. I'll tell you that much.
Well, listen, bailiff top on the top and pajama pants on the bottom.
It turns out that's just always who I have been.
And I love you for it.
I'm my own spirit animal.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well.
And that also might be Brandy talking. I kid.
Brandy's my spirit animal.
Who's kidding who here?
Oh, that naughty minx.
I was just thinking of something.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, I'm just slowly putting this together as we're talking. And I'm going to throw this out there, not to belabor, but just as a thought. It feels to me like there's some signs here that this could potentially have been an abusive relationship.
Sure.
The fact that she, because listen, obviously, I guess Kansas to New York is far, but it's not as far as China, for example. And,
sure.
You and I both know that if you want to maintain a relationship with somebody long distance, you can do it. It's just feeling to me more and more like, was it her choice that she was always in the home all the time? Was it her choice that she was kind of, estranged from her sister and niece
sure.
and the rest of that family? Was it her choice that she was always going out looking put together? Or was that something going on in the relationship with Jeff? Is it, again, and we're just exploring all potential possibilities here. But it just feels off. And it just feels to me like for someone to be that kind of secluded. And that is, of course, a very common sign. Alienating, isolating someone from their friends and family is like the first thing on the list of any, signs of emotional abuse or, et cetera. So I just put that out there because it does feel to me like it's interesting that she, that she just kind of, we just faded away, which does happen too. But like,
sure,
with all of the added stuff and the fact that people commented on the fact that she was never really out and that she was such a homebody, And I mean, listen, if that's the case, and I mean, I'm really taking some leaps here because I obviously have nothing to base this on other than, these little bits of information, but that could have changed the dynamic with Ellie as well. Perhaps that has something to do with her journey as well right now, that maybe is there stuff that she witnessed that she doesn't know whether she can come forward about? Is she afraid of him? Like there's lots of, layers to what that kind of dynamic could involve. I just throw that out there.
Oh, no, I think that is brilliant because, I mean, really, you hit the nail on the head. If you're gonna, in an abusive situation, you cut the ties for anybody so that you're cutting off all of their available escape routes.
Exactly.
They have nobody to contact. She would have had no money of her own. Was that her choice? Or was it his choice to make it so she depended on him because he wanted her to depend on him? We have no idea.
But it fits the theory that he killed her if he was abusive and he's devoid of emotion, all this stuff. It fits that, but it also fits that she did just escape and run away and is with somebody else, God knows where. It fits both of those things if it was an abusive situation, right? So it's interesting to think about. All right. So we're in February 2020, March 2020. Where are we?
Well, we're now February 18th of 2020.
Okay.
Because this is the day. Now the police have just done the welfare check. The husband is like, she's fine. Went away with friends. And the daughter is like, that's not what he told me. So she goes and files a police report and missing persons report specifically. Right. And while she's at the police station filing the report, her dad calls her. So because she's sitting with police, she answers it on speaker. And the father is like, he admitted he made up the entire story about the mental hospital. He said, I didn't want you to think she'd run off with a stranger to do something. The truth is, she kind of disappeared. Again, if she doesn't really talk with anybody and she left everything behind and has no money, where was she going to go? Like I have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah.
So he claims that after she disappeared, he got a call from someone saying that she'd been admitted to a hospital. He doesn't know who the person was, but he just accepted that. Then he claims a few weeks later, somebody called and said, well, she's died. He didn't take notes about what hospital it was because he was, quote, busy at work. So I can tell you this, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I get a phone call that's like, your husband has died, nothing else in the world matters in this moment.
I don't know a lot of employers that would say, you got to keep working in this moment. I think it's pretty across the board that you go, I have to leave. And they go, his spouse has died. Like, that's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. I also find it interesting that he says they called him at work because then there's no like real way to be like, they called on this phone. You can track, like they could look at the phone and see all the numbers that called, but where he was working at the time, they can't narrow down whether a phone call came into him at that time or not.
Right.
Because here's the thing. I don't know when it happened, but he did a bit of a job change over the years.
Oh, okay.
He was no longer a mechanic. He was working in information technology for the courthouse.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. So I don't know what that's about, but
yeah, that's interesting.
I also find it crazy that like they repeatedly said like when they met, he was a car mechanic and a salesman. And then all of a sudden, like 20 years later, he works IT for the government. Yeah, I don't know how that leap happened, but I find that incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
But even then, like, it doesn't matter how busy you are at work. If you're like, my spouse has died, they're going to give you a break.
Yeah,
right?
like nobody, that's again, this just fits again this weird profile of this non-emotion, which you hear from him in the episode too, because she tape recorded a lot of their phone conversations, and you can hear him like, you know, other than him kind of like getting his feathers ruffled a little when she said, you lied to me, and he was like, I didn't lie. Other than that, he's like very non-emotional, which is, it just feels, it feels very odd. All right, so what happened next?
So he says he didn't take notes because he was busy at work.
Right.
Then he says he got a call that someone's going to come by the house and pick up money for the cremation. He got an urn, gave them the urn and money, apparently. Then they dropped the urn back off at the house. It was all done by phone. It was later, I'm not even sure when later, but like at least a month or so later, he looked in the urn and it was empty. So now he's changed his story on, oh, well, she might be alive. He suggests maybe she faked her own death to make him feel bad. To which I say, make you feel bad about what?
Great point.
What you do, Jeff? What you do?
What did you do?
You know?
Yeah.
If you were like an upstanding guy, decent husband, why would she want you to feel bad?
Absolutely.
You know? So I have that question.
Yeah.
So then Ellie was like, well, maybe we should go out and look for her. And he said, I don't know where to look or what to look for. So she said, well, I will help you. To which he said, and I quote, you're stating that as if I'm going to go out and walk up and down the streets and knock on doors and look for her. And no, I'm not going to do that. She left, so I don't feel the need to chase her.
Jesus.
So again, pushing that, she just up and disappeared. So police have checked travel records. They checked flights and planes and anything in and around the area, all of it. They checked traffic cams. Nothing. There is just no sign of her. She didn't, I don't know if she even had a vehicle of her own, but we just have no idea how she would have even left the house unless it was like on foot with nothing, because all of her stuff was at the house. None of her stuff was missing. And not to get dark, but if you're going to like kill someone, isn't it like 101 to get rid of some of their stuff? Like put some of their stuff in a bag, toss it in a river, donate it a couple counties over, something like that, and then be like, they took off. See, their stuff is gone. Like,
absolutely.
It just seems weird to be like, oh yeah, she disappeared, didn't take a thing with her.
I'll see that, and I'll raise you if you're a police officer assigned to this case, would you not see a man who is admitted to lying and go, we need to push harder and get more done with this because clearly he's hiding something?
I still can't believe they haven't forced him to talk. I understand that you can't arrest him or you can't hold him for like so many hours. I get that.
Right.
But you can't force him to come talk to you, even with a lawyer present. Like,
it's really bizarre. It's
just insane to me.
All right. Well, listen, we got to wrap this up soon. So talk to me about Jeff's lawyer, because he did get a lawyer, right?
He did. And part of the reason he did is because the police executed 2 search warrants.
Right.
One for the family home in Prairie Village, and where he told police again she was just away for the weekend.
Right.
So this was no longer, she wasn't missing and she didn't take off with friends. This was she was just away for the weekend. So again, he's telling another version of his story. He can't even keep his own story straight.
Yeah.
So the police find the urn, see that it's empty, and they said it's practically brand new. So I find it weird that even if he went and bought it just to go with his story, like, it's just so weird. Was he thinking he would give it to Ellie and be like, here she is,
And then she'd never look inside it? Like, that's bizarre.
It's such a weird thing. All of Angela's stuff was at the house when the police got there. She left her purse, phone, passport, driver's license. Oh, and her car. There we go. It was in my notes. She hadn't removed any money from her bank accounts since she was last seen. Ellie said that her mom didn't like using credit or debit. She didn't like going shopping on her own, hardly left the house without her daughter or her husband. Police dug into the backyard, found nothing. They had a second search warrant in a place where Jeff stores cars that he works on, because he likes to fix up vintage cars or whatever. Right. And this particular place is a Marionics Inc., which is a granite supplier. I could not find a link between the guy who owns this place and Jeff, but it's like a weird building because it's surrounded by like woods and behind it is a pond. Apparently the police have been through both of those and found nothing. So because there's no concrete evidence against him, they have made no arrest, nor have they publicly identified him or anyone else as a person of interest. But he knows, because he has said this to Ellie openly, he knows that the first person they look at is the husband.
Right.
So he got himself a lawyer. Now, his lawyer, he hired a criminal defense lawyer also, not just like he got a lawyer, like he made sure. The guy he got is named Paul Cram.
Oh, boy.
And I can tell you what he could cram, because this dude, most of the stuff he seems to handle is like DUIs and date rape cases. Oh. He has a blog on his website, and one of the entries, which I read, it was the second one I was reading through just to get a feel for what the guy was like. Yeah. And at this point, I had to stop reading it because I was going to throw my computer. He had one of his blogs was about talking about what he does as a defense attorney for a client who's accused of date rape. And he said how the Me Too movement has just really made his job more difficult, and how it's just the classic story of two people who were friends growing up, and there was always sparks, but nothing ever happened. And then they go away to college and they come back and they see each other again, and it's been a long time, and they have a couple of drinks and one thing leads to another. And then next thing you know, the gentleman gets a phone call. He's accused of rape. And I find it so interesting that his whole blogs are just like, it's always the victim is in quotation marks, and the person he's talking about is always the gentleman. Ugh. And it was, oh God, I just can't.
Also, what a specific story. Like, date rape happens in so many different ways that it sounds to me like Mr. Cram might be, I don't know, admitting his own story or his own relation to date rape.
A lot. Yeah. Like,
I mean, even if there's lawyers, even if there's criminal defense lawyers who do defend date rapists, etc., are they all writing blogs about like the vitriol they have for the alleged victims? And I say alleged because he is saying alleged.
Yeah. I mean, I get that sometimes someone will accuse a man of rape and it's not real. Sometimes.
But statistically speaking,
can we just believe women, for Christ's sake?
Can we please believe women? Exactly. And they do say statistically it is like virtually it like never happens. It's something like 0.1 or 0.0001 or something. Yeah, we just need to believe women.
Believe women.
And the fact that this man is like, well, he's just upset because it's like messed with his business, and that's disgusting. Yeah. And the fact that that's the person that Jeff has hired, like to defend him, like it's worse. Again, he's not helping the case.
It's worse. This lawyer in 2007, he had a client named Edwin Hall.
Okay.
This Edwin Hall, and I'm not going to just say accused because he has since admitted it and was found guilty and has gone to jail. He abducted, strangled, violated, and dumped this poor woman in the woods. Her name was Kelsey Smith. She was only 18.
Oh.
She was missing for 4 days before they found her near a lake. He was found guilty. He was put in jail. But because of that case, it led to the creation of the Kelsey Smith Act, which is a law that states that cell phone companies can ping a phone if authorities deem that the subscriber could be in danger. Because that was a big thing. They were like, can't we just find her phone, find where she is? And they were like, well, that would be invasion of her privacy. And so days later, they ended up finding her. But the point is, this led to something positive. However, that's the guy that tried to defend this guy. And I understand that there are defense lawyers who have to defend people like this, but just, again, I go back to his blog where he just spends the whole time being like, well, you have a few drinks and, the gentlemen always tell me, she was very flirtatious.
Oh,
he's practically saying everything, but she wanted it. I know she wanted it. And it's like, come on, just believe women. Just believe women.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's so gross. I can't even begin. And the fact that he was involved in a high profile case where a woman was unfortunately very brutally murdered and dumped in the woods. Then Jeff was like, that's my guy. Like, that's crazy.
It's almost like he just Googled, defense lawyers. And it was like, oh, this guy's dealt with something. And it's like, yeah, but his client was found guilty. What don't know why.
And also like, what's his track record? Like, why are you going for somebody that defends like the worst of the worst? Like that feels like it's a bit of a,
Yeah, especially when like his main things are like DUIs and date rape and other like sexual misconduct or whatever. It's like, so why that guy? Like, I don't get what his point was for going to that guy, but the point is his lawyer is also gross. So.
Real gross. Okay, so
gross.
All right, we got to wrap things up. Before we get to the theories, is there anything else in the timeline we need to hit on before we talk about what the potential theories are here?
I mean, there's a quick rundown of like things that Jeff has claimed.
Okay.
Just like as a small refresher for the listeners. First, he claimed that Angela was taken to a mental hospital against her will, and then she had a stroke. Next, he claims she disappeared. Someone called, said she was in a hospital, then they called me and said she had died. Then he says she was away for the weekend. And then he's saying, you know what? She probably faked her own death to make me feel bad. So I just feel like that's quite a ride to go on. And again, it's so hard it's easy to forget. We're talking about his fucking wife here.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking about somebody he knows. We're not talking about a neighbor that he may have seen. We're talking about his wife. And yet he's just not like, he's like, she left. I'm not going to follow her. And it's like, really? Because if mine chose to up and leave, I'd have some fucking questions.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I would follow. And I mean, yeah, I mean,
and the bigger
you
point
do
for
a
me,
quick find your phone on your laptop and you find where that bastard is.
You sure do.
You know?
But the bigger thing for me also is, and I understand that they don't have any evidence, so they can't arrest him. I get that also from watching television and film, but it's like, there's so many lies. It just feels crazy to me that there isn't, it's a wild kind of story that he's managed again to have to actually answer to the police in any real way. And it just feels crazy to me that they can't bring him in on that. And I get that legally, I guess they can't bring him in on, all the lies, but it just feels like it's such a shame because to your point, this poor woman has now disappeared. There's no body. But also, I will add, he did make it clear on the episode, he is the only suspect. Because to your point, she stayed home all the time. She never went anywhere. She never did anything. She didn't really have a friend group. She was estranged from her family. Who had a motive in this situation?
Yeah. I mean, the police did search his phone records and his internet history, but found nothing useful. Someone had asked Ellie if the police could like track Jeff's cell phone location from around the time that Angela went missing. And she said that they could, but he often didn't take his phone with him when he went places. But she said they've checked through his phone and everything and found nothing helpful. You said it. He's the main suspect. He's kind of the only suspect.
Yeah.
And it's just, what baffles me is he starts off as a mechanic. He's now an IT guy for the government. And somehow, I'm guessing only because of the 8-month lead he had before the police found out, but somehow he pulls this off with leaving no evidence behind.
And not a trace. That's the other thing that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Because truthfully, again, us exploring all options, the only other person that could even be a suspect would be Ellie, because they did have a fight, and they often, again, I've learned that from TV and film. They'll be like, "What's the last time you talked to them? You fought? Oh, that's a whatever."
Yes.
But then what does that look like? That's she was a good student. She was a good girl. It feels impossible that she, is there a world in which it got physical and something happened and then her dad helped her cover it up, and this is a huge conspiracy that the two of them have somehow orchestrated between the two of them? In the grand scheme of anything being possible, sure. Do I think that that's the case? Probably not.
The investigator in me is not going to say no to anything. Sure. They get a little angry. Somebody grabs something off a nearby shelf or table, hits somebody else, is in shock and doesn't know what to do.
But
so he's like, I'll deal with this.
Sure, but they would have found proof of that in the house. If they had a forensics team go through that house, there's no way that an accidental, heat of the moment kind of death or accidental death, there's no way that they wouldn't find it, in my opinion.
Oh, you would think so. I just am wildly fascinated by there's just no sign anywhere. And I get that this is just kind of this is our wheelhouse. This is what we do. We do the unsolved mystery. But yet I'm that bozo that goes into it and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll solve it by the end. And then it ends and you're like, fuck, I guess I won't. It's shocking to me how can someone just up and disappear? It's just
and his repeated lies and lack of empathy to me is also a huge,
oh yeah,
all signs point to Jeff. All right, we got to wrap it up. Theories, of course, she's gone somewhere. She's alive right now. Who knows? Potentially, escaping him. Potentially, obviously, she was killed. It feels like, he's the only real suspect in that situation. And then, of course, you also, indicated that perhaps, is there a suicide as a possibility for her?
Ellie had said that when she saw her mom after she got back from Italy, her mom seemed like she'd lost weight. She was more anxious, more sad. And again, she just spent the last year without the person she liked the most in the world. So she's just hanging out with Jeff, who can't be a good time. I'll say it. He can't be fun to be around. And so, yeah, she's probably dealt with some depression. So who knows where that may have taken her.
Yeah.
But again, I still feel like no matter what she would have done, she would have been found by now.
Yeah. And that's the thing that just it just falls apart. And also, may I also just add, this has been a year where they've been apart. Yes, to your point, she'd lost weight. She seemed, like she was despondent, all of these things. Is it feasible that abuse began after Ellie left the home? Is it feasible that Jeff was not abusive towards Angela until Ellie was out of the home? And then Lord knows what was going on in that house. If Angela didn't have any sort of friend or family group, rarely left the home, it's who knows what was going on behind closed doors, which is truly heartbreaking. And, you know, is part of Angela's freak out in this fight with Ellie about, you know, I don't see you anymore, whatever, is part of it, that it's like she's been living in this secret hell. I mean, who knows?
It's more than possible.
And she probably didn't want to tell Ellie because it's her dad. And listen, I mean, no shade. I mean, I get that's a very nuanced situation to be in.
What about this? So let's say Ellie goes away. The issues between husband and wife, assuming that they're still not communicating very well. So abuse does start.
Yeah.
Ellie comes back and is like, hey, I'm here now. And maybe Angela was like, you can't be anywhere near him because I don't trust that he's not going to go for you. So she throws a fit, overreacts about something and is like, I just go, get out. Because she said they fought before, but she's never told her to leave before. So
that's
it's like,
interesting.
Was she doing the classic mom, I'm going to protect my child, take the brunt of it, you get out, go. Because I find it wildly fascinating that was like the time she sent her out and then suddenly that's it. She's gone, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I mean, I'm fascinated that the police still find this just a missing persons case.
Yeah.
That's kind of where they're at. And I guess I guess their hands are tied, but at the same, I just feel like I would push harder, but yeah, maybe that's
Who
just
knows?
me. I mean, in 2019, over 600,000 people were listed as missing. And that number is insane. However, that is the lowest number since 1990.
Wow.
For missing people.
Isn't that like wild?
In 97, there were like 980,000 people that went missing. And the majority of cases do get solved. It's like the vast majority are solved within days or weeks. Only a small portion actually involve foul play. And as we know from movies and TV, that first 48 to 72 hours are crucial. And he somehow was given like 8 months where he could just, whatever he needed to do. I just find it fascinating that, so say he did do something, or even say she just left on her own or whatever. He didn't remove any of her stuff from the house.
Yeah.
He was just like, all right, well, that's it. This is just how I live. I'm just fascinated by it and I don't get it.
Well, listen, I hope more than anything that continuing to get this story out there is going to continue to get, the police talking. I know they've said that it's a cold case. They review it once a month, according to what Ellie said in the episode. And I hope for Angela's sake and Ellie's sake and her family that we can get justice, obviously, for her death or whatever has happened to her. I hope that she is found, though it does feel very bleak at this point. Christy Oxborough knocked it out of the park, as always. Thank you so much for your research. You never cease to amaze. You never cease to amaze. So thank you for that.
I'm just really fucking jazzed that somehow I got to bring in Love Actually, Footloose, and Beauty and the Beast.
It's
3 of my favorite things, like in one episode. And it's not like I was taking a leap. Maybe I was.
Never.
Maybe we were, because I think
listen,
Brandy's here. It needs to be we. Oh, she's leading this train. She's like a warm hug on the inside. And I think I'm really going to like this bitch,
On that note, we thank you so much for listening to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. If you don't follow us already, get onto Instagram at True Crime and Cocktails. You're going to want to get in on our 12 Days of Christmas giveaway challenge if you haven't already. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at Not Detectives, Facebook at True Crime and Cocktails, and go to our website, truecrimeandcocktails.com, where you can visit all of our extended, unedited Zoom episodes of the show, as well as extended case files that Christy uploads there. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Brandy and I love you.
See you next week, everybody. Oh, where we do our final episode of the new Netflix Unsolved Mysteries episodes. And of course, that episode is
Stolen Kids?
Stolen Kids. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Okay, 2 seconds. Hold on.